Why do narcissists walk around naked? Part 1. Naked narcissists. How narcissists use nudity as a weapon of dominance, trauma, and abuse. Have you ever had that spine-chilling, stomach-dropping moment when someone you trusted whipped off their clothes in front of you, completely out of the blue? No warning, no consent, just bam! Full frontal nudity shoved unceremoniously into your field of vision. Well, buckle up, folks, because that's exactly the kind of horror show the snakies in our lives seem to revel in. For reasons that will curdle your brain just thinking about them, narcissists seem to get a real twisted kick out of parading around in their birthday suites in the most inappropriate settings. And I'm not just talking a little too much skin here. I mean full-blown, utterly shameless nudity that leaves you questioning every moral value you thought these leeches possessed. As we covered in our previous published video titled Examples of Narcissist Twisted Nudity, we had explored the dark psychological underpinnings driving the narcissist's disturbing fixation on nudity, from their stunned emotional development and warped power dynamics to the sickening reality of how they use their naked bodies to sexually abuse and exploit those around. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can find the link in the description below. But why? What's driving these bare naked power plays and boundary violations? Is it just pure ego run amok? Some deep-seated need for control and domination? Or are these shriveled exhibitionists simply getting off on making us supremely uncomfortable? That's exactly what we are going to dive into this first eye-opening video. We will peel back the narcissist's twisted facade to reveal the dark psychological underpinnings driving their disturbing fixation on nudity, from their stunned emotional development and warped power dynamics to the sickening reality of how they use their naked bodies to sexually abuse and exploit those around them. We are going to lay it all bare. And just to make one thing crystal clear up front, these degenerators couldn't care less about your comfort levels or consent when it comes to getting their new freak on. In fact, that's often the whole point. So brace yourself, because some of the stories I'm about to share are going to have you clutching your pearls and gasping for air. So consider this your final warning. What you are about to witness is the naked truth behind the narcissist's nudity obsession. And trust me, it ain't pretty. Let's start by understanding the snaky psyche a bit better. Move on. The narcissist arrested development. At their core, these malnourished human-esque beings are little more than overgrown toddlers trapped in adult bodies. Their emotional maturity is more akin to a 3-year-old having a meltdown in the toy aisle because mommy said no candy this time. And just like that tantrum throwing thoughts, one of the narcissists' first lines of defense against their semblance of being told no or having boundaries enforced is to defiantly try shocking you into submission and silence. Enter their gross penchant for inappropriate public nudity. Think about it. What's one of the most primal transgressive acts a freak show can pull to get attention and dominance over a situation? Ripping off their clothes and waving their shriveled parcels about, that's what. It's like they revert to that shame-free mindset of a new toddler shaking around at a family barbecue, not caring who sees their naked baby butts. Except in the Narcissist funhouse mirror mindset, it's somehow justifiable and empowering for them to force that uncomfortable sexual energy onto everybody around as nobody controls me power play. Literal infant mentality, if you ask me. An office worker recounted to me how her narcissistic boss would frequently forget to do up his pants zipper and buttons whenever she was called into his office, just leaving Mr. Winky dangling in plain sight like a horrible puckered wind. To that snaky salesman shoving his shriveled manhood into her line of sight was an easy way to remind her who had the position of power and dominance in their professional dynamic. Probably got a sick thrill from the fact he was essentially forcing her to bear witness to his pathetic genitalia if she wanted to remain employed. In another case, a husband who worked from home took a greeting his wife by just not wearing any pants at all, ever. Can you even imagine? Just wandering around peeing swinging in the breeze every time you glanced over, under the laughable guise of feeling free and comfy in his own space, right? And Rasputin was just a humble country priest. Knucklehead stripping away his clothes was a toddler-minded tantrum to constantly remind wifey who was in control of their marital home turf. A gross way to flex his toxic ownership over every aspect of her environment and boundaries. And let's be real, with narcissists, there is always an undercurrent of sexualized power anytime. They start treating you like an audience held hostage to their nudity. It's all about dominance with these freaks. So in essence, the narcissist's proclivity for being buck as nude ties directly into their stunned emotional growth and toddler-minded need to shock you into giving them the attention and control they so desperately crave. They will gleefully cross any line, demolish any boundary, all to remind you that they and they alone dictate the terms of engagement, and often their swinging schlongs are like a security badge announcing the admin has arrived, baby. Erotic proprietorship and objectification. But it gets so much more twisted than just childish attention seeking and dominance plays. Folks, because for the narcissist, nudity quickly becomes a way to exert what I call erotic proprietorship over their victims and surroundings. See, in the narcissist feudal mindset, they view their significant others, their children, their homes, their subordinates, hell, anyone in their sphere, as glorified belongings to be lorded over as they see fit. Your comfort and consent means less than nothing. Your humanity doesn't even enter the equation. So just as they treat treasured possessions like cars or jewelry with a sense of ownership and control, a narcissist has zero qualms about walking around nude in front of their property precisely because it reinforces their stance as feudal lord and master. I knew a wife whose snaky husband would lounge around naked watching TV with his eyeballs basically burning holes into her whenever she entered the room. not in a sexy, lusty way, more like how a bored terrifier fixates on a chew toy. Just a constant dehumanizing reminder that her body, her presence, her entire being was little more than his property to ogle and command as he pleased. His mentality was akin to, this is my house, my wife, and I will boss her around and bear my schlong at her whether she likes it or not. And that's exactly what that mute stub of a man would do, mashing his genitals onto every piece of furniture and leaving his stanky naked imprint across their entire home as some sort of territorial pissing urge. Now take that dynamic and apply it to the narcissist relationship with their own children, and you can hopefully start to understand the sickening depth these bottom feeders are willing to plumb. I've heard beyond horrific stories from survivors about their narcissist parent insisting on bathing or even showering with their adolescent children past any reasonable age, making no attempts to conceal or be modest about their nudity from the very kids they gave birth to or helped create. You can imagine the lasting trauma, confusion, and disgust these boundary-demolished kids experience seeing their own parents' exposed genitals practically being shoved into their faces during their most vulnerable formative years. Just typing this out gives me full body shivers. And the narcissist's typical logic when confronted is always some twisted take on it's not a big deal, we are family, and this is just how things are done around here, gaslighting their own children into accepting that forced sexual exposure as somehow normal or permissible. But we all know the sick truth. It's nothing more than the narcissist asserting their etched-in-stone belief that those kids' bodily autonomy and boundaries are 100% subservient to the narcissist's depraved ownership mentality. Plain and simple, to the freak pulling in this incestuous BS, the kids are just prized belonging to be paraded around and put on display however and whenever fits the narcissist's disgusting whims. In the end, the narcissist's nudity crosses way beyond inappropriate into patently criminal and exploitative territory way too often, because to the sexually objectifying freak shows, wearing people's skin cloaks, your body is not your own. It's theirs to command and expose as they see fit to reinforce their stance as supreme ruler of the realm. Sickos of the highest order. Section 3. The sexual abuse and grooming through nudity. Alright, let's take a deep breath here, because we are about to dive into some of the most disturbing depths of depravity the human mind can fathom. For a very distinct subset of narc zombies out there, their obsession with nudity goes far beyond just a power play or some creepy way to reinforce their imagined ownership over those around them. No, for the most severely mentally decayed and morally bankrupt directs, public nudity becomes a vile stepping stone towards outright sexual abuse, assault, and grooming of the future victims. I am talking about the kind of exhibitionist knuckle draggers who start innocently stripping off and exposing themselves and their genitals to to unsuspecting adults and children. But it's not just about the cheap thrills of shocking and offending people. These cunning emotional sadists are actually getting some sort of sick gratification out of inflicting trauma and violation. Like this one snaky coworker I heard about who used to purposefully let his towel slip in front of female employees, chuckling away as they understandably recoiled in horror and discomfort to that spineless worm. Shoving his naked body into their line of sight was a calculated way to assert dominance, humiliate, and scar those women, all while getting off on their distress. These are the kind of warped, morally bankrupt individuals who transform simple nudity into a weapon of sexual abuse and emotional devastation. Where a normal, well-adjusted person might feel shame, embarrassment, or the need for privacy, these bottom-feeding cockroaches see only opportunity, an open season to violate, humiliate, and traumatize anyone unfortunate enough to cross their path. I've heard beyond disturbing accounts of these emotional vampire leeches exposing themselves to unsuspecting adults and even minors in public, deriving some twisted sadistic thrill from inflicting trauma and violation. Imagine the lifelong scars those poor victims are left to carry, all because some narcissistic freak decided to get their rocks off by forcing their genitals into innocent people's faces. And it's not the strangers these sick degenerates prey upon. No, for the most depraved subset, their nudity fixation extends right into the home, where they actively use it as a tool of abuse against their own children. I'm talking about the kind of twisted, narcissistic parents who insist on bathing with their adolescent kids long past any reasonable age, or who waltz around the house in the buff, making zero effort to conceal their privates. Imagine the lifelong trauma and confusion these poor kids must experience having their own parents' exposed genitals shoved into their faces during those critical formative years. It's the stuff of absolute nightmares. And when confronted, these monasteries always resort to the same twisted logic. It's no big deal. We are family. This is how things are done around here. Gaslighting their own flesh and blood into believing that violating their most intimate boundaries is somehow normal or acceptable. But we all know the sickening truth. To these sick, depraved control freaks, those kids are nothing more than prized possessions to be paraded around and put on display however the narcissist sees fit. Their bodily autonomy and right to privacy means less than nothing. So in the end, the narcissist fixation on nudity isn't just about dominance or attention seeking. For the most depraved of the depraved, it becomes a vile conduit for outright sexual abuse and the grooming of future victims. Whether it's violating their own children or traumatizing unsuspecting adults, these emotional terrorists view the human body as nothing more than another possession to be degraded and exploited for their sick pleasure. Truly the stuff of nightmares. This has been a heavy, unsettling journey into the twisted psyche of the narcissist and their obsession with nudity. But by shining a light on these dangerous predatory behaviors, my hope is that you will feel empowered to spot the warning signs and protect yourself and your loved ones from becoming victims. If this video resonated with you, Be sure to stick around for the second part of our exploration into why do narcissists walk around naked. In that video, we are going to peel back the layers and expose the stark, unsettling parallels between the narcissist nudity and the behavior of wild animals. The link to the next video will be in the description below or up in the eye icon on YouTube. Together, we can break the cycle of abuse and put these shameless exhibitionists back in their place where the sun most definitely doesn't shine. So hit that subscribe button and let's dive even deeper into the dark world of narcissism.